Power interest grid. What is this topic all about? That's what we are going to discuss in this video today. Hello and welcome to pmclounge.com. I'd like to remind you, if you're into reading articles, if you would rather read about this topic than watch a video on it, first link in the description is going to take you to a relevant article on this topic over at our official website pmclounge.com, so you can check that out. Second link is going to be a playlist of every single video that we have done on stakeholder management knowledge area, and then third link is going to be your FAQs answered, which are on stakeholder management knowledge area, of course. So three important links, you can check them out whenever you feel like. For now, let's get started and understand the power interest grid. So before we jump on the power interest grid, let me talk a bit about stakeholder analysis. Now this is actually a tool, one of the key tools in the process known as identify stakeholders. So in the identify stakeholders process, one of the most important tools is known as stakeholder analysis, and that's what we are talking about before we jump to power interest grid. If you have forgotten already, identify stakeholders, this is the process. One of the tool and technique of this process is stakeholder analysis, which is what we are discussing. We have already discussed this process. Like I said, second link in the description, the playlist of every single video that we have covered on stakeholder management knowledge area. You will find a video on identify stakeholders there as well. Now, in order to make use of this tool known as stakeholder analysis, what you need to do is you need to interview all the stakeholders, and that way you are going to understand the value that they expect to derive from the project. What do they really want out of the project? That's something that you're looking for here. Now, based on this analysis, based on your interview with them, you will be able to divide the stakeholders in different groups. When you do so, your focus should be on what motivates these stakeholders, right? This is obviously linked to the value that they are going to derive out of this project, right? So you can then, once you know what is the value that they want to extract out of your project, that they are expecting from your project, and you kind of understand that this is the value that is motivating them to be a part of this project, that's how you can divide them in different groups. Now, when you do so, this division is going to help you in what you communicate with them, right? So you need to communicate only the relevant information to these stakeholders instead of sharing extraneous details which could be useless for them and they might find it boring. So let's take an example. The project sponsor might not really be interested in what's going on in your project, your day-to-day activities. The sponsor does not have the time for it. The sponsor is not really interested in it. The project sponsor is the most important stakeholder of your project. Still, he may not really be interested in your day-to-day project activities. So what is the value that the sponsor is expecting out of your project? What is it that motivates your project sponsor? Once you have that kind of analysis, you will be able to understand what level of details should you communicate to your project sponsor. And that's what stakeholder analysis is all about. Also, this is where the power interest grid comes into the picture. Let's talk about it. But before we reach there, let me remind you, playlists is where the gold is. You can head over to youtube.com/pmclounge/playlists. That's where all our playlists are listed, cleanly divided into the knowledge areas and other important concepts that we have discussed. So do check it out. All right, now let's talk about the power interest grid. And why is it called a grid? Because it actually is a grid. It contains four sections or quadrants, and they have two axes. One belongs to power, the other belongs to interest. That means someone with low power and low interest is going to end up in this quadrant. Similarly, someone with high power and low interest is going to end up in this quadrant, right? So let's start off with stakeholders that have high power and high interest. So what do you do with such stakeholders? You need to manage them closely. You need to make greatest efforts. Note these two words down. You need to make the greatest efforts to satisfy stakeholders that have high interest and high power in your project. You need to communicate with them regularly. You need to make sure that they are on your side at all times. So these are the stakeholders that you're going to basically spend most of your time on managing closely. Some examples are the project sponsor, the customers. These are your most important stakeholders, high interest and high power. Let's talk about stakeholders that have high interest but low power. So you need to keep them informed, right? You need to make sure that no issues are arising. They are most likely interested in as well as possess helpful project details. So they are the ones that have the details. They may not have power because they possess low power, but they have high interest in your project. Can you think of such stakeholders? Examples could be support functions, HR, finance. They are really interested in your project, but they don't exert any specific power on your project because they are from different functions, right? So if you're working in a matrix organization, this could also include people that are actually working on your project, right? So they have high interest on your project, but they are the coders, testers. They do not have enough power to influence the project. Next is stakeholders that have high power but very low interest in your project. So what do you do with them? You need to keep them satisfied. You need to put enough effort to keep these kind of stakeholders satisfied. You also need to make sure that the communication is just enough, right? Chances are they are not really interested in the nitty gritties. You don't have to bore them with day-to-day project status. This could be the CEO of your company, right? He has high power, but he has low interest in your project because he is looking over 1000 such projects, right? So you need to keep the CEO satisfied. He has high power, but he has low interest in your specific project, right? Functional managers are a good example here. Functional managers that send their resources to work on your project. Their resources could lie here, right? Their resources may have high interest, but the functional managers, they may have the high power, but they may not really have high interest in your project. Finally, you got low power and low interest. These are the stakeholders that you need to monitor closely. You need to touch base with them timely, but not too often. Once in 2 weeks, once a month is also fine. And you need to make sure that there aren't any problems. So they have very low influence on your project. They have very low interest in your project as well. But you need to make sure that you monitor them, and you need to make sure that no problems are arising in this section of stakeholders. Now, in real life projects, when you are creating your power and interest grid, you are actually going to put in names of people in each quadrants. Who do you think have high interest and high power? Who do you think have low interest and low power? So you're going to name them here. You're going to also mention their formal job title so that it becomes clearer to you to refer to them. So these are some of the details that you can enter and maintain in your power and interest grid. Why is this important? When you have it, you can just look at a person and you can understand, okay, what kind of details does this person require from my project? What is it that motivates him? What is it that he is expecting out of this project? So that is why maintaining a power and interest grid is of utmost importance for a project manager. Okay, I think we forgot one thing, and that is the fact that your subject matter experts, they are examples of the folks that can actually appear in low power and low interest quadrant because you may only consult them when required, right? You are not really actively engaging them in your project. They might not be interested in actively being engaged in one project because they are the experts. They may get pulled from all directions, so they have low interest, low power in your project. But yes, you can consult them from time to time. One other set of stakeholders that can be a part of low power and low interest are external consultants as well. Question for this video: should the power interest grid be accessible to everyone, or is this something that you should keep to yourself, and why? Really looking forward to read your answers. I really enjoy them. So let me know, what do you think? Should this be accessible to everyone? Should this be something that the project manager should create and keep it with himself, and why? Looking forward to your answers. And with that, we come to the end of this video. Smash that like button if you got value out of it and understood the concept of power and interest grid. Smash the bell icon to stay notified whenever we upload new content. Also, don't forget to check out the website pmclounge.com, your number one free PMP resource. Thank you and have a nice day.